For our Econ project, we did the country of Venezuela. Venezuela was declared a country on July 5th, 1811, and sits on the northern coast of South America next to Guyana and Colombia. The Spanish-speaking country of 29 million people is nicknamed the Land of Grace after Christopher Columbus visited the country on his voyage around the world. Having once been known as an undeveloped agriculture, Venezuela has widely been regarded as one of the world's largest oil reserves and leading exporters. However, ever since their president Nicolas Maduro took over in 2014, the economy has been undergoing a massive crisis, and almost all of the citizens have put the blame on him and his decisions of managing the country. There are multiple different industries in Venezuela. Some examples are the agricultural industry, the tourism industry, and the manufacturing industry. But without a doubt, their biggest industry is oil, as it has been the backbone of their income. However, since 2014, it has experienced a significant collapse. The fall began when President Maduro took over the industry and began appointing political operators to be in charge, even though they lacked a lot of knowledge in the oil sector. These operators supported Maduro's policies but damaged the industry's occupational capacities and bypassed all control or accountability. From 2015 to 2017, the government spent $70 billion in debt service, which sacrificed essential resources for the oil industry and imports and necessary supplies for the economy. In 2019, the U.S. imposed sanctions, which led to a 50% decrease in domestic production capacity. These sanctions made it really tough for Venezuela to engage in the global oil market. Lastly, the pandemic hit, and the demand for oil had reduced significantly, as so did Venezuela's prices and income. Although there have been statements that say the demand for oil could increase soon, there is still uncertainty about the new strains of COVID, and it is nearly impossible for the oil industry to be where it once was. As for the leading economic indicators, for GDP, it remained constant through the 80s. It started to rise in the mid-70s when the oil industry was nationalized, and it peaked in 2013. It decreased by around 75% from 2016 to 2020 due to the oil industry collapse. For the unemployment rate, the most recent peak was in 2003 at around 17%. It stayed at around 6 to 8% through the 2010s and has now skyrocketed due to the pandemic. Inflation, the country is currently experiencing hyperinflation. The monthly inflation is 2,000% and the annual inflation is 15,000%.
Venezuela's current GDP sits around $50 billion in US dollars. 98% of this comes from national expenditure. 26% of that coming from capital formation. The large majority of it, however, 71%, comes from Venezuela's final consumption expenditure. This is subdivided to 59% being household final consumption and 12% being government final consumption. The remaining 2% of total GDP comes from external balance on goods and services. Looking into GDP and the industries that contribute to it, 42% come from services like tourism. 52% in industrial employment, such as manufacturing and oil. 6% in agriculture. Venezuela's labor force is 13.3 million. 64% of that being in services, 23% being industrial, and 12% being agricultural. Venezuela's economy has been through a lot in the past 30 years. In 1998, Hugo Chavez became president and launched the Bolivian Revolution, aiming to restore democracy and economic independence. He was briefly deposed in 2002 coup, but regained power in 2003. This is when his policies began to take place, showing an expansion from trough in 2003 all up to his death in 2013 at an all-time high, or peak. Chavez's death, however, marked the start of a dark era in the Venezuelan economy. In 2013, the worldwide oil market collapsed, leaving the oil-driven economy of Venezuela in the dust. In 2014, the Venezuelan government stopped releasing economic data, including spending, inflation, and growth. Venezuela was marking high inflation rates and was not able to provide their citizens with basic goods. This led to violent protests of the government, ending in the arrest of several corrupt officials. This helped reshape the economy around for a year or so. However, the insane inflation rates and lack of basic resources were not able to be fixed, as most thought that the economy collapsed again in 2015. The economy has not recovered since, and many economists believe it will be 30 years or so before it may be possible for it to recover again. For the most part, modern-day Venezuela's policies are left over from the Chavez era. He implemented many policies that are still active today. In early 2000s, oil prices soared and gave Chavez the expenditure needed to put into place his Bolivian mission, aimed at the improvement of economic and social conditions within Venezuela. These policies included redistribution of wealth, seizure and redistribution of land, and creation of employee-owned cooperatives. Venezuela soared under these policies. Unemployment and inflation neared all-time lows. This was until the oil collapse of 2013. The Venezuelan economy crashed. The new president, Maduro, increased spending to compensate for the lack of oil production. This, coupled with high inflation, poor private business relations, and a looming threat of loan default, prevented the entrance of stronger currencies into the Venezuelan economy. Without the ability to continue on their loans, the government defaulted, causing the economy to collapse even further.
The main exporting industries of Venezuela include crude petroleum, refined petroleum, and distilled alcohols. Crude petroleum was by far its highest export at $12.2 billion in 2019. Venezuela primarily exports to India, China, and the United States. In 2019, Venezuela was 80th in total exports, exporting $14.7 billion. This is a $49 billion decrease from 2014. The main importing industries of Venezuela consist of refined petroleum, rice, and corn. Refined petroleum is the largest of these at a total of $938 million. Venezuela mainly receives imports from China, the United States, and Brazil. Venezuela was 130th in total imports, importing $5.57 billion. This is a $32.7 billion decrease from 2014. A big reason this happened was because of the world oil prices in 2014. As you can see, the country's CPI was lowest in 1996, then steadily grew until hyperinflation occurred in 2013. To try and fix this issue of hyperinflation, President Maduro started printing more money. This would only make things worse as world oil prices continued to decrease. Citizens started converting their money to US dollars to maintain their financial stability. The government tried to issue currency controls, but people just started exchanging bolivares for US dollars through either the black market or crossing border to use ATMs in Colombia. This would raise the value of the US dollar while severely decreasing the value of bolivars. For the short and long run aggregate supply for Venezuela, we use 2014 as a base year because this was the year that oil prices started to decline. The second year we used was 2019, which by then Venezuela's economy had endured many economic struggles. Due to the ongoing hyperinflation, the overall price level has increased substantially by 9,500 units. Because of this price level increase, the real GDP decreased significantly by roughly $140 billion. Aggregate demand shifts to the left because total consumer spending decreased as people feel much poorer. The short-run aggregate supply also shifts to the left because production costs with the price level increase. Due to both of these shifting to the left, the long-run aggregate supply will also shift to the left. As you can see, in the 1990s, the Human Development Index was much lower than the average HDI of 0.725. It steadily increased over time as the price of oil increased. However, from 2013 to 2019, the HDI has decreased from 0.777 to 0.711 units. In 2013, they were ranked as the 68th best in this category, but dropped to 113th in 2019. One of the main factors that have led to this decrease in Venezuela's HEI is the shortage in food supply. Many families have reported going to bed hungry because they do not have enough money to buy food for everyone. Because of many people not eating as much, the overall health of the country has suffered. This has led to a shortage in medicine. Malaria cases have significantly increased due to this. In 2019, it was estimated that over 1 million cases of malaria occurred. There was also over 5,000 confirmed measles cases. The many cases of these diseases have decreased both the life expectancy and overall well-being of Venezuelan people. In 2019, 3 million people, which is equal to 1/10 of the country's population, fled. It comes as a surprise that the HEI is even this large, considering how poor its economy is doing. Many economists are questioning whether the HEI is a good measure of the country's overall well-being. And here are our works cited.